question, like, is he actually a rational male? Well, I'm not questioning. He's not a rational male. No one is 100% rational male. No one is ever going to be that. It's an ideology. It's going to remain in a book. It makes sense inside of the book, and it stays inside of the book. And that's the reality, right? And that's the true red pill, if you want to define a red pill properly, because it's supposed to be the truth and nothing else, and nothing more, nothing less, right? And these are sizable books. They are minimum 200 pages. You can download them absolutely for free by simply going to, for example, this one, you just go to getmymarriageback.com, smartrealestatewholesaling.com, realestatemoneysecrets.com. So yes, I am a 3 times author, and those books are out there for your consumption, and they are also available everywhere on Amazon, anywhere that you pick up books. So in case you prefer a physical book like that. He's one of the duos on the podcast, a popular podcast called Roommates. And I'm proud to say Hafeez is a Nigerian like myself. Deo was raised here. I wasn't raised in the United States. I was only born here. So let's go ahead and play that video of him calling him full of shit. Like, I do think a lot of people are full of shit in this space, but let's see why he thinks is full of shit. Let's find that video. Boom. All right.
To me, it's just like with guys in that far red pill space, when you tell them you guys are hurt men,
yeah,
it triggers them.
Yeah,
because it makes
it triggers them. It triggers them because you are having an emotionalist conversation with emotionalist goals. And they are trying to have.
What the hell is an emotionalist conversation with emotionalist goals? I understand the emotionalist goals part. You're never gonna win that battle. But emotionalist conversation, does that really exist? I'm not sure if that exists, right? Now, I do want to come back to this video, but let me play another clip for you really quickly of Pat Bet David. The guy who owns Valuetainment's channel, a fantastic channel nonetheless, from his PBD podcast, right? Interviewing Rollo. And I think this is going to do, because again, he contradicts himself quite a bit, right? But I get it, because it's very hard to have this this kind of conversation, right? Let's see. Let me find it. Come on, where? Yeah. I hope I find it. Let's see. Let's see. Pardon me here. Pardon me. Okay, there you go. I think I found it. All right.
Yeah. Are sold a philosophy by somebody who has had dramatic life experiences that we haven't had.
Right.
But
so this is what I call the WCC experience. People that are advising you from a place of WCC, worst case scenario, right? It's, you gotta be careful with those kind of advices. Worst case scenario or generalized. That's why I don't spend too much time on statistics, because statistics and data are recorded information. Basically, they lack real time, right? And human beings are always evolving. While it's useful to look at history, right? We can look at history and say, hey, this is what we can learn from history, right? But the idea of looking at history and projecting it on people and just predicting that everyone is going to behave like this or your future is going to be like this is problematic, as long as you're a human being, right?
they impose their philosophies onto you, and you kind of sit there and say, I'm going to buy that. But you shouldn't buy that because it may not work for your life. It's extra, but because the other person is such a better salesperson, it's so much emotion into it, you buy into it, right? You got to be very careful which philosophies are people.
So PBD, this guy right here, understands sales. He understands that sales, people make moves to buy 85% based on our emotions, and they justify with logic later. So he's saying, if somebody's advising you from a place of emotions, right? Like, can you really be advising people?
You buy. So I remember when I interviewed her, Gloria Allred. We're in her office. I walk in. And you know, she's a perfect, like she's the, for people that don't know who Gloria already is, how do you define who she is? She's a Michael Jordan
Tyler.
of sexual harassment lawsuits, right? Can we say that? Yeah. And
Attractive older
She's the Michael Jordan of sexual harassment lawsuits. That isn't that crazy? That is mad, right?
woman, accomplished.
by the way, I had the most incredible time sitting down with her when the interview was done, because things got heated. When the interview was done, I said, "Can I hug you?" She says, "You know what, Patrick? All you have to do is ask. That's the key."
Yep.
I'm like, okay. So she gave me the biggest hug. We laughed it out. But I pushed her. She pushed me. I said, "Look, Gloria,
So that's how like a woman who is always using every opportunity to talk about her talking points based off of her belief system and her traumatic experiences potentially. But let's keep listening. Let's see if she's had traumatic experience, right?
you talk about feminism and women's rights and all this stuff. How many people you got working here? A lot. Why is it that the front desk clerk was a woman, but all your partners' pictures on the wall, they're all men? Well, are you? How about you, Patrick? Are you not a bigot? It was like such an interesting dynamic. But then I said, I want to find out about.
So there's a tendency to always go in the direction of the sign language, shame, insult, guilt, and need to be right, right? There's a tendency. Now, the point I'm making here is that it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. When you're speaking and you're speaking very passionately of something, it's usually not because you've done scholarly studies of it. It's usually because you can relate one way or the other at a very personal level, okay?
This lady. When I looked at her documentary, looked at study stuff on her, when she was in Cancun, do you know the story about what happened to her in Cancun in Mexico? So when she was younger, in her early mid-20s, very attractive girl. She goes to a doctor. She meets a doctor. Doctor says, "Let's go back to my practice. I want to show you my office." In the office, he rapes her. Okay, and she keeps it to herself for a while, but she creates this level of anger towards men, right?
And naturally and rightfully so, because she's a human being, right? So she became a feminist, a radical feminist, lawsuits, all this. I think this lady they're talking about is the publisher of Huntington Post. I'm not sure.
So later on, she gets married to this man. Then they get a divorce. I think after she gets a divorce, he ends up committing suicide. The guy kills himself, her first husband. And her second husband, she gets married. They get a divorce. She keeps the last name, but sues the hell out of him. And you saw what happened to her daughter. Her daughter is now kind of similar, doing what she's doing. I don't know if you're following she's following her footsteps. Similar personality, strong personality. And she's out there saying, independent woman, independent woman, independent woman, independent woman. And women are like, she's right, she's right, she's right. And it may work for some, but some actually do want to have a family, do want to have, do want to have a husband, do want to stay.
Right, but people like that, they basically stop the whole world and say, hey, those people don't exist. This world is just terrible. You need to watch out for this, watch out for that, watch out for that, watch out for that. Now, if this was a business, right? If we're running a business, let me just make sure that, right? If this was a business, right, then obviously you should make sure that you mitigate against risk and all this kind of stuff. But we're human beings. We're human beings. There is a point you get to, just like even in business, there's a point to that there's an overkill of trying to protect yourself, and then you miss out on life and love. And that's the message that I'm driving home here, right? But again, he's still talking about people that tend to advise from a place of WCC, worst case scenario, and generalized data collection.
Build something together with them. How do you differentiate between, somebody who is selling a bag of goods that maybe worked for her because she had a painful experience? How do you process that? How do you get somebody who is listening to this saying, well, she's right, versus saying, I don't know if that philosophy is going to work for me long term?
It's very difficult to make a rational argument with people who are like seated and steeped in emotionalism.
So that's him admitting to what he's basically accusing Hafeez of. So at that point, it's very hard. It's not just very hard, it's damn near impossible that you ask human beings to rationalize without their emotions being involved in it. There's a point you study so much data that it becomes a part of who you are, and then you start to express that emotion just as much as anybody else or the next person. So at this point, let me go back to Hafeez, right? Let me go back to Hafeez.
Empirical debate with you. They're trying to say, here are the numbers, Hafeez. Here's what's
So in spite of people saying this is an empirical argument, I have to look at your action. I'm even looking at the facial expression of Rollo right now, right? I'm looking at his facial expression right now, and his facial expression is telling me that it's not all the way rational. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying there's emotional expression on his face. And if he's talking to me, I'm going to be interacting with him based off the emotional expression I'm seeing on his face. And that dilutes whatever level of empirical argument is trying to create by default. So if you don't increase your level of intellectual abilities, intellectual quotient, all the way up to emotional quotient, EQ, this is where you start to miss it. This is where a lot of Rollo Tomassi red pill argument will miss it.
what's going on in the real fucking world. How do you parse that out? Tell me. I would like to know. How do you parse that data out with your belief set? Because you're having this argument.
The data, again, is recorded data. We're talking about real time right now. He's having a conversation like a normal human being with a young lady, right? And he's speaking his insights. Insights is a function of data. It's a function of how I feel right now, right? Oh yeah, you don't like the idea of feeling, but that's the reality of what you call a human being, right? As a matter of fact, nobody gives a shit about anything else outside of what they feel.
With the goal of, is this right? Is this wrong? Does it feel good? Does it not feel good? What's positive about that? Where's the positivity? Where's the love in all of this? Right? That's the goal. And I'm not saying that that's not even necessarily a bad goal, but when we're talking past each other, it's because my goal is to show you the data and show you the empirical, material, observable fact.
The title of this video on YouTube is that this is why Hafeez is full of shit. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, right? And if Hafeez sees that, are you going to tell me that you have expectations that he won't necessarily be a little bit upset or feel some type of way? Maybe not upset, maybe feel some type of way. Are you saying that you have expectations that he should just see it as just a thumbnail, right? See, again, the unrealistic expectation is at all-time high. And you have people who claim to be rational males discounting the fact that human beings will always feel some type of way at any point, a given time, including themselves. That's all I'm saying, okay?
Facts here and say, well, what do you think of it? Is this true or is this not true? It doesn't matter because you're not focused on whether it's true or it's not. You're focused on whether it feels good or it doesn't. Or I'm a bad person or I'm a good person. That's what you're trying to, that's the end state of whatever your debate is all about. I made this, or I read this on last Sunday's show. But again, it's all in emotions. They presume that every human being's priority should be based on this emotional, are you hurt?
No, you assume that human beings have the ability that their conversations, including yourself, will somehow not involve emotions. That's unrealistic expectations. It's a fallacy. It doesn't exist. And this is why instead of solving any problems in these spaces, you end up creating more problems. A lot of the minions that are following you, while they may have had experiences that is worth being having empathy about, right? Empathizing about, right? Will end up not solving these problems because the emotion about the statistics, watch what I just said. They're emotional about the statistics and the data that you bring to the table. As much as they're trying to remove themselves from the blue pill mentality into the red pill, they become emotional about the red pill. They turn the red pill into a religion. Guess what that is? Emotions. So you're not helping anyone heal, essentially. Okay? Now, he's never claimed that he's trying to help anyone heal. He claims that he's giving them the tools, right? He claims that he's giving them the tools, right? So in recent times, I've noticed that this guy is attacking everyone. And the idea that he's attacking everyone makes me question, like, is he actually a rational male? Well, I'm not questioning. He's not a rational male. No one is 100% rational male. No one is ever going to be that. It's an ideology. It's going to remain in a book. It makes sense inside of the book, and it stays inside of the book. And that's the reality, right? And that's the true red pill, if you want to define a red pill properly, because it's supposed to be the truth and nothing else and nothing more, nothing less, right?